Joining us on the debate tonight, former diplomat G Parthasarthy, also strategic affairs analyst Maroof Raza, also joining us, former Chief of Army Staff General VP Malik, and we're getting the BJP voice in with BJP leader Hardeep Singh Puri, Sanjay Jha from the Congress also joining us. Before we get the political voices in on this, Maroof, we want to understand from you why this is so sensitive, why it's been classified all along, and what essentially is Maxwell saying. Is he saying that strategically the disaster of 1962 can really be blamed or seen as Jawaharlal Nehru's fault?
Well, essentially he is implying towards that, and it has been implied from the very beginning when the report was put together, essentially because by inference we would say that those who were responsible for the debacle were not just military commanders but also the political leadership which gave directions and in fact got into micromanagement of conflicts which is not to be done. In this case, in the case of Henderson Brooks report, the report was given guidelines very specifically to keep out of blaming political figures or senior military commanders, but they went a little beyond their brief, as I understand, and they have allegedly put the blame on a few individuals, particularly Pandit Nehru, Krishna Menon, and 2 or 3 military commanders, General Bogi Sen, who was Eastern Army commander, General Kaul, who was commanding 4 corps in Tezpur, which was really directly responsible in the Nifa sector, and also Brigadier later General Monty Pallit, who was Director of Military Operations. The report indicates that direct orders were issued to posts right on the front line, which is never done by the political leadership or by the military headquarters. This is to be routed through the normal command channel, and often orders were given which were difficult to implement and often seen in the military and tactical context absolutely absurd. So therefore, the report highlights those deficiencies, though the brief of the report was to look at very mundane issues such as tactical preparedness, equipment, training, logistics, clothing, etc. But they went beyond that because they could not really come to a conclusive assessment of what went wrong without understanding the role of army headquarters, which was very clearly influenced by the then Defence Minister Krishna Menon. And the reason why it has remained suppressed by most analytical accounts was basically to avoid direct blame on the then political leadership, Pandit G.
That's the question we are asking, Maroof.
And many others.
That's the question we are asking. We've got the Congress voices, the BJP voices, but first to General VP Malik, your take from the army position, from the military position. Should this report be suppressed 52 years on, or should it be made public?
No, in fact, for a long time, in fact, I have wondered why this report has not been released. If you suppress a report like this, even an operational report, how do you learn lessons from that? And so therefore, I don't believe in exaggerated sense of security for political reasons. And by denying the report or by keeping it under the carpet, we have denied lessons to our military and to our political leadership of that war.
But General Malik, repeated governments have done it, and not just Congress-led governments. The fact is that this report has not been declassified even when an NDA government was in power.
I agree with you, and therefore I am saying that I do not agree with the governments which have not permitted its release. Let me also tell you that a large number of senior army officers have read this report. In fact, during my time, we could not release the report because it was not in my hands and it was a top secret report. But I had said that any PSO coming to Army headquarters must read this report because there are many lessons in that. So as far as the present situation is concerned, the report has come out in open, legally or illegally, I don't care, and I am not really bothered about the political repercussions of it. But I think it is high time we did that, we read that, because there are many lessons to be learned at policy level, at military level, at intelligence level. So as far as I am concerned,
But that's the issue, General, isn't it? Because if there are lessons to be learnt, there are also many embarrassments and many mistakes that have to be accepted. And the Congress wants to fix political accountability on a lot of notes. Why not on this? And why shirk away from it 52 years down the line, Sanjay Jha?
Firstly, let me tell you that we need to understand whether we are looking at the genuine official document. I think we need to have a caveat here in this discussion.
Make it public.
To the best of my knowledge, the website is already down. So I think these are pertinent points.
The website is down because of pressure.
But the question is, why not make the document public? Why not declassify it?
I don't know, but just because Times now cannot decide on a referendum or by 6 people sitting on a TV panel discussion what should be India's foreign policy or national security challenges. I think when the Defence Minister of India makes a statement saying that the report is sensitive and has current strategic value, I think it's about time we stop being cynical.
You can't brush everything under sensitivity. There are a lot of issues, there are a lot of matters which are being brushed under the carpet with the issue of sensitivity.
Since you have made... Since
because
you asked
52
me a
years,
question,
52 years, governments have not bothered to act on it. That is why we are raising the question.
I thought today Arnab Goswami was not hosting the show. So I expected, since today Arnab is not hosting the show, I thought I'll get a little more of uninterrupted time, but that doesn't matter. The point I want to make is very simple, Anand.
Can I come in here?
I want to answer your question in very simple terms. The fact of the matter is that we all know that India and China have for years had the longest border dispute, which is 3,500 kilometers, if I'm not wrong.
Well, where did it all start, Mr. Sanjay Jha?
Continues to be a
border dispute. Where did it all start?
Because there is no demarcation or line of actual control.
There is a lot of detail in that.
That's the reason why, when either of the two countries tries to create a border infrastructure, there happens to be some kind of skirmish. Now, let me answer your point here. Give me a minute. You mentioned that there are political challenges. There is no political challenge because in the report that has partially out, there is no mention of any political leader. There have been,
and why not
therefore, there is no political motive.
Why not
I want to
make
establish
certain
that up
sections
front.
of the report
and I want
public?
to make
If there is sensitive information in that report, Sanjay Jha, if there's sensitive information there, why not make parts of it public? Perhaps there would be certain sensitive information which may remain classified. What is the reason for the entire report having been classified all these years? It's been more than 50 years.
Well, let me tell you the one thing that I think all the experts on the panel will recognize, that the biggest lesson from 1962 was that if you look at it, India's defense preparedness, its whole, ammunition, its armory, its training, its entire defense infrastructure today, and being the largest arms importer, and the subsequent conflicts, you've seen how India has come up stronger. So there have been positive learnings. Now, as far as this report is concerned, there have been apprehensions raised that there are issues. You may not want to disclose what your issues were with regards to certain border strategies with China. Now, these are things that, we cannot casually discuss on a TV panel for heaven's sake.
I disagree.
Maroof, just a second, I'll come to you. Yes, General Malik, you had a point.
Anand, can I come in here?
I'll just go across to General Malik and come to you, Maroof. Yes, General Malik.
Firstly, let us not look only at military matters, although most of the contents of this particular report are military in nature. But we have also to learn lessons in policy making. The fact is that we went totally wrong in assessing the geostrategic situations and the implications of security when the Chinese came into Tibet. So, starting from that, there are huge policy implications, security implications, which we just did not read. So let us not stick only to the military matters, although that is most of the content in this report, as Maroof has said, are military in nature, but it is an important document for us to analyze our foreign policy, our international relations, and the way the politicians should treat the military.
Absolutely.
The kind of situation that we faced, which has been described, the civil-military relations were at their worst. There is no doubt that the force levels were reduced from 4,50,000 in 1957. We brought down the force level to 3 lakhs when we were facing the Chinese. And as it happens most of the time, there was hardly any equipment. So it's not only equipment shortages, our force levels being down, there are huge implications in our policy making, and I am afraid even today we are suffering from those, and that is why I say this report is important, because even today we need to learn lessons from this report.
Yes, Maroof, that's the question. You know, the fact is that is it India's inability to really live down the ghosts of 1962 which formed today's policy with regards to China, which formed today's border policies?
You see, I'd like to take on to the point which General Malik has just referred to very rightly. In fact, after the 62 war, the Indian armed forces increased their strength from 300,000 to 850,000 as part of the shock that we got that we really need to have a much bigger military force to defend our borders, which Sanjay has talked about. Sanjay, the Indo-China border is 4,500 kilometers, not 3,500. But anyway, that's a minor point. I think the bigger issue is that if the report, as General Malik has also agreed, who's read the report and I have seen extracts of it, if the report refers largely to military issues, then why has there been a political reluctance to go public with it? And the second aspect is it is not just the Congress-led government, even the NDA-led government had a 5-year time span to go public with it. And the third point is the then Defence Minister of India, YB Chavan, after the report was submitted, said so in Parliament that the report clearly brings out various military flaws and deficiencies, but he clearly overlooked what led to the military flaws. Military policy, and General Malik will agree to me, he's been a chief, that military policy and strategy is decided on political directions. What were the political directions that were given out at that time that led to this?
And that's exactly what's being questioned.
Also, we are not talking about Pandit Nehru's forward policy, which led to the Chinese getting ping-pricked sufficiently for Mao to decide to teach us a lesson. And there is another factor, and that is there are certain military commanders who are also responsible. I'm not saying Pandit Ji was only responsible. I'm not saying Krishna Menon. There are guilty men of 62 who were in uniform. So therefore, it was a collective blunder at the level of Delhi, which the man on the ground had to suffer humiliation for. Our troops fought very well and in certain cases
not only
put up
who said what
phenomenal
and who did
resistance,
what,
both at Rezongla and various other places. But the political and senior military leadership failed them. So if there are lessons to be learned, and I don't buy this argument which the distinguished Sanjay Jha has given, that these are matters of national security that should not be debated on television. I'm sorry, Sanjay.
These are matters
we
of
are past the Nehruvian era when Nehru built about a legacy that matters. Anything should be shoved under the carpet to say it's too sensitive to be discussed in public. There are matters that concern our people, concern our armed forces. We must discuss them in public.
Please, much of this discussion would not be taking place if some of us had actually read the report. My submission to you is that the 100+ pages out of the total report of 190 or so which I have read clearly shows the following. 1, this was a committee established by the then Chief of the Army Staff to look into what happened in 1962 and what went wrong in the areas of training, equipment, system. No, this is not Sanjay. This is Hardeep Puri. This is Hardeep Puri. Please, I have not intervened.
Sorry, sir.
I have not
Sorry.
rebutted. Let me complete this. Let me complete this. Yes. I did not interject with any of your
please
words. It was the courtesy of being heard. Please, and like Sanjay, I was hoping that with Arnab not being around, we will actually be shown the courtesy of being able to say what we have to.
We will continue to ask questions, Mr. Puri, and more questions are coming your way, but you make your point.
Let me at least say...
Please make your point.
Please, number one, this report deserves to be declassified straight away because there is no sensitivity.
Why didn't the NDA do it? Why didn't the NDA government do it?
Now let me...
Why didn't the NDA government do it?
Well, NDA government...
Why did the likes of Rajiv Chandrasekhar and Rajnath Singh raise questions only in 2008, 2010 and not during the NDA regime?
And why demand the declassification now?
Can I please complete this?
Yes.
Can I please complete this? I'll come to the NDA also.
Yeah.
Look, this report is very clear on the thrust. The Indian Army in 1962 was not properly trained, it was not properly equipped. But most important, the senior leadership of the army, military and the political leadership followed a policy of forward policy. They were trying to move in a forward direction on the expectation that the Chinese would not react. And there are parts of this report which bring this out beautifully. that this was a failure
we have
of
those parts
intelligence.
Yes, you've told us what the report. Yes, you've told us what the report is about, Mr. Puri. But the question is, if the BJP now says that that it should be declassified, the question remains: why was it not done when the NDA was in power? Why was it that George Fernandez, as the defence minister, had said that putting this out in public is not in public interest?
Well, I don't know what the reason then was. Let me tell you now, the BJP's clear position now is this needs to be declassified, and we need to learn from the lessons of 1962.
But that's a convenient argument that we don't know what the reasons were then, but now we want it declassified.
It's not a convenient argument.
Because you're not in power now.
There are parts of the report which remind us of what has happened in 2012 and 2013. For instance, and the Srinagar Leh road had just been built in 1962.
There will be a lot of questions that will be raised as to what happened during the Kargil war also. But the fact is that the BJP government for 5 years did not do what it's all talking about today, where everybody is making noises. Why didn't they act then? And what has changed in the BJP's position over the last 14 years?
And 1962
like Maroof said, is it right? You're making the noise because you're not in power.
And 62 are not comparable. 62 was a national humiliation, and unless we come to terms with that,
it's about political errors, and it is about errors in judgment. It's about policy errors, and it's about error in preparedness.
In Kargil, Kargil, you were only you were caught napping. But
yes,
in
Maroof.
1962, your political leadership actually connived with the wrong kind of policy. The forward policy was an invitation for military disaster and humiliation.
Whatever your defense, Mr. Puri sir, whatever your defense of Kargil, and we have the architect of the victory sitting with us on the show, General Malik, hats off to him. He turned a surprise into victory. But what we need to understand that between 62 and now, it's 52 years, the level of civil-military relations, the level absence of understanding amongst the political leadership of matters of national security. Mr. Jha will defend the defense minister, but let me tell you, I am convinced that there is not enough understanding of what led to the debacle in 62, what would lead to another debacle today. Our level of defense preparedness today again raises many questions.
Yes,
and whatever political one-liners the politicians may give, that everything will be done for the armed forces, the reality is far from the truth.
But that's the point, Maroof, is it not? I mean, should it not be made public so that lessons can be learned from it? Maroof, I want to get G Parthasarthy in on this. Mr. Parthasarthy, if we can come to you on this. You know, the question is, why was it classified? The question is, would it have served India and the military better if it was declassified? And also, what is your take on whether or not this report is actually damning as far as Nehru's forward policy is concerned?
Well, I hope I'm not interrupted. I'm not like the general political. The fact of the matter is, just for your information, I joined the army just after 62, and I've served in these areas. The fact of the matter is that it was a debacle in 62. Let's not forget, it was such a bad debacle that it was the Congress party which forced the then Defence Minister Krishna Menon, against Pandit Nehru's wishes, to resign. Now, as far as Mr. Nehru was concerned, let us also not forget that 1 month before the conflict broke, he goes on a foreign visit and announces at the airport that I've asked the army to throw out the Chinese. Now, there was no intelligence assessment, which we now know, that for 7 months China had been prepared while we were pushing small pockets forward. Then, with regard to the command, Mr. Nehru and Mr. Krishna Menon appoint a favorite General Kaul, who has no field experience, was an officer of the Army Service Corps, to command there. Orders go directly from Delhi, bypassing all the commanders on the field. So I think 52 years have elapsed. I'm not going into the politics of when this should be done or why it wasn't done. I think the time has come. This has to be done. And I'll tell you why. I go along with Maroof. The state of civil-military relationship is as bad today as it was in 1961. The defense budget. So you're saying that there are important and valuable lessons to be learned? No, the defense budget has gone down to 1.72% of GDP, which is what it was in the 50s. We are not prepared Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past.
Okay.
I'm not saying when to make it public. Make it public when you find it appropriate. Let the country learn. And please,
what is the
let us
opposition
not
of the
go back
political
to the
fraternity
state
to this
of
point of
defense,
view?
unpreparedness.
Sanjay Jha, we might be six
Nothing,
people.
I totally agree with him. I totally agree with what Mr. Parthasarthy is saying.
We might be six people asking questions and debating this issue. Unlike, contrary to how you would want it to be done, the issue is why hasn't the political fraternity shown the will to get the answers out and declassify these documents? And why hasn't the Congress led the charge? Because they are the one who want political accountability, isn't it?
Anand, when you are in government, you are privy to a lot of strategic, developments that you are best positioned to take a call on. That's the reason why you're there in government. So let's not try and challenge that decision. I mean, as Mr. Parthasarthy said, I think that was a reasonable statement. At some point in the future, if the government decides to declassify it, so be it.
How far into the future?
But the point I want to make here is Mr. Puri, 1 minute, Mr. Puri tried to politicize the issue. Now, Mr. Puri tried to politicize the issue. I want to give you an example of Kargil that everybody seems to be going
1 minute,
very gung-ho
Mr. Sanjay Jha, just
but
1 minute. It's not just,
you had General Musharraf. Can you give me a minute, please? Can you please give me a minute?
You may please
General Musharraf flies into Indian territory in a helicopter 11 kilometers. He sleeps on Indian soil and he goes back and the Indian government did not know about it. In Kargil, 50 soldiers were already dead fighting for India.
Please consider why we are debating this today. Mr. Jha, why we are debating this today is because Australian journalist Neville Maxwell has released parts of this report. I just want you to consider what he said about why the Indian government might be cagey about making this report public. Sanjay Jha, please give us a minute.
Are you trying to tell me that an Australian war journalist put something on the online?
An Australian war journalist who was here as the Times correspondent in the 60s, who saw what happened, who wrote about it, but he was not heard. He was silenced.
He has specifically said
his voice was turned down. He was ostracized for his point of view because there was a politically driven perception that led to believe that it was China the aggressor, and that is what is being questioned. The decisions taken on ground were influenced by political and administrative decisions, and that is what we are questioning. Who said what, who did what, and why did they do it?
But this is a report. Either you turn around and say that this report is not genuine, or if this is your own Indian Army report which is being leaked because somebody gave him a copy. Neville Maxwell's political conclusions I do not agree with. But the Indian Army report talks about deficiencies in the Indian Army. And I think the public has a right to know what was wrong in 1962 and also a right to know how
Mr. Hardeep Puri,
after 10 years of UPA rule.
Mr. Hardeep Puri, the public had a right to know back in 1999 and when the NDA government was there in force. And if they have not done it then, you cannot just dismiss it and say, I don't know why they didn't do it then. We should do it now. No, that is not an argument which is acceptable.
Yes, absolutely.
Tina, you had a point to make.
Yes,
because we did not do it in 1999.
Mr. Puri, I just want to go back to Sanjay Jha. I want to go back to Sanjay Jha because the main reason why are we discussing this today, Mr. Sanjay Jha? We're talking about this today because, irrespective of what your opinion of Neville Maxwell may be, he has specifically said the reasons for the long-term withholding of this report must be political, indeed probably partisan, perhaps even familial. There are very specific reasons given out by Neville Maxwell as to why this report may have been suppressed by successive Congress governments. I mean, we need an answer to that. There is a very specific reason that Neville Maxwell has given, and he's put it out there when he's put out these 100 pages of the report that he suspects there would be political reasons behind keeping this classified all these years.
Well, all I'm saying, I condemn the choice of your word being suppressed. Let me tell you.
These are not my words. I'm just quoting Neville Maxwell.
Foreign relation or foreign policy implications. One minute. There are also the military strategy that you employed in 1962.
India and China are very different countries today.
But please let me tell you. If you read the sections of the report, there was a military intelligence failure. I'm sure whether it's a bureaucracy or the defense minister or the prime minister.
Who drove the military intelligence failure? Who was calling the shots, Mr. Sanjay Jha?
Each of them have a collective.
Who was calling the shots? The military on ground were following instructions.
Witch hunt here. contributing to a very meaningful discussion.
Are you?
This discussion.
Are you by deflecting the questions and trying to digress from the issue? Are you contributing to a meaningful discussion, Mr. Jha? The question is, who was calling the shots? Who was sending dictats to people, the forces at the Thagla Bridge, and right from sitting in Delhi without even knowing?
On Times Now, you allowed Ravi Shankar Prasad's comment where he talked about Pandit Nehru and he said, this is why we
allowed the Congress's comment of Abhishek Manu Singhvi also.
That was, I think,
we allowed both voices to speak, but our questions are common to both.
No, but
General Malik,
look at how provocative that statement is.
General Malik, do you agree with what Mr. Jha is saying? That it was military intelligence failure and that is what should be highlighted?
Can we have some respect
for them? Or do you disagree and do you feel that political accountability needs to be fixed? Whoever was calling the shots in the civilian government needs to be accountable for the mistakes they made.
We are not discussing this objectively. We are getting into political fight and I don't want to get involved in that. But I want to correct. Firstly, I want to tell Hardeep Puri that I have read the report and I know exactly what is written in that. Secondly, I also want to tell Sanjay, he's a good friend of mine, that after Kargil, the government ordered an inquiry under Mr. Subramaniam, and that inquiry report is in public. And even the military, which no doubt suffered in the beginning, we welcomed the report, and we also wanted that all the lessons that have been learned should be followed up.
Yes.
In this particular, there were army officers also to blame, as Maroof said. In fact, I blame the senior army officers for not standing up to wrong policies which were dictated by the policy makers. You're talking of military intelligence. Military intelligence was nowhere. In fact, the person in charge, Mr. Malik, the director of the DIB, he was the one who was more into laying the policies rather than collecting intelligence and making an assessment. And that is why the entire policy making went wrong, and the military was asked to follow the forward policy, which I believe should have been refused because we didn't have the resources. And that is what has been brought out in detail in this report.
So, Maroof, is that why this report was classified? Was it to shield the policy makers that General Malik is talking about?
No, General Malik has obviously read the report and he's made all the right observations as a military commander. But let me bring out two other quick points. One is Neville Maxwell's credentials. Neville Maxwell was given access to the report by the then army chief who had commissioned the report, General Chaudhry, sometime in the mid-1960s. But he was asked in his book, In India's China's War, not to give specific names, but draw lessons from the report to try and paint the big picture. More importantly, there were two other people who have read the report and have not gone public with it. So this question of who has read the report, whether it's right on the internet or not, there was a Defense Ministry Historical Division study which was carried out about this operation, which even put out extracts of this report and its findings on the internet. When it was pulled off, somebody got weak knees on the Defense Ministry. The second point which I want to make is no political leader can be blamed in that report because there were no notes kept of the meetings that were chaired by Krishna Menon.
Yes.
Because he said that these are all classified meetings, no notes are to be kept, which is really absurd because in such situation, notes and minutes are kept in detail. General Malik will authenticate what I'm saying, but these notes were not there. So the blame could not be put. So therefore, the biggest problem is the blame can only go by inference.
There is one very interesting section in the report.
Yes, Mr. Puri.
No, there is one very interesting section in the report which says that the matter is very sensitive and hence no minutes will be kept. And then the defense minister goes out and announces that we have issued instructions that the Chinese be thrown out of this area. Now, all these point towards complete mismanagement. Now, for instance, as General Malik is saying, we followed a policy, forward policy, without having the military strength to carry that through. Number two, the Lieutenant Colonel Katoch, who was in charge of intelligence on the border, it comes out clearly in the report, says that he is a brigadier by the time the report is written, that if I had known that we were planning an offensive, I would have advised the army headquarters that not to do this because the Chinese will not only react, but they will react strongly, and this would lead to a military debacle. So all this is there in the report.
Yes.
I had never suggested that General Malik has not read it. I was suggesting that my friend Sanjay Jha had not read it. So General Saab, please, I hope I didn't make that. Second thing, this report is a technical report on training, on equipment, on tactical issues. It should be made public only for that reason. The political debate can follow. It clearly follows from there that Mr. Krishna Menon, the defense minister, and Panditji, the prime minister, were completely clueless.
Not just that,
it is the same mindset
Sanjay
which
Jha,
allowed Panditji to take the issue to the United Nations on the Kashmir issue.
There is another doubt that I have. Is the government and is the Congress very clear, vehemently trying to suppress this or not make this report declassify this report because it would actually throw out of the window the perception that China was the aggressor? Because that is what is being challenged the most, isn't it? However you call it, Jawaharlal Nehru's forward policy or India's aggression, the entire perception that a particular piece of land was claimed as our land and they said to throw the Chinese out. Was that actually true? That's the biggest question that this report actually asks. In terms of perception, was India misled by the then Prime Minister and the then government?
You should invite Mr. Parthasarthy to speak on this. He's actually served in the area.
I want to make two quick points here. First to Mr. Puri, because he continues to make political statements. I think India can be so unsafe under the BJP, NDA can be understandable.
Yeah, listen, my friend, I read the report. I read the report.
Was not
listen,
even aware
I spent 6 hours reading the report.
The defense minister was accompanying terrorists to Kandahar.
You would not be saying the thing
you are not hearing what I'm saying.
If you had even
your Home Minister LK Advani.
No, I'm telling you, you would not even be using these arguments.
The Home Minister LK Advani was not even aware that Defense Minister Jaswant Singh was accompanying terrorists to Kandahar. So please don't express your concern for national security.
You haven't even read the report.
I want to mention something else. Can I finish? Let me tell you this, Anand, since you asked me the question, please request Mr. Puri to just kind of take a deep breath. The point I'm making is that it's very easy in retrospect to criticize the forward policy. Mr. Puri, don't worry, even I'm a student of political history, so don't worry about it. The point I'm to make here is that China has always had an expansionist attitude where its borders are concerned, not just with India, but with several other countries. You can confirm it with Mr.
Sanjay Jha. Sorry, I have to interrupt you there. Because this report, time and again, right from the late 1960s till date, Neville Maxwell and many others have challenged this perception that the Congress has tried to create, that China was the expansionist and it was not India who played the aggressor.
Yes,
declassify the report and prove your theory.
Mr. Parthasarthy, let's get your response to this. Mr. Parthasarthy, let's get your response to this. This particular report, is it not questioning this very point?
That India has a policy of annexation.
Mr. Parthasarthy?
No, the point is China has been apprehensive that India has got a policy of annexation, which has been misplaced, but that is what gets debated.
Has to say.
Amag, now if people assure me I'm not political, that I will not be interrupted, state your specific question, because I'm rather tired.
Mr. Parthasarthy, the question is, as Anand was saying, that this report, does it not question who the aggressor in the 1962 war was? Is it the question of perception? Is it the report questioning the fact that it was India that was the aggressor which led to the war, which was a debacle?
Well, let me say, Maxwell tries to make that point, but the reality is different. He is wrong.
Maxwell is
wrong. You are not an aggressor if you are positioning troops on your own border. You are not moving into the Chinese side by any stretch of imagination, particularly in the Ladakh sector.
So what was the forward policy about that?
No, the forward policy was mistaken, as General Malik says. It was all right diplomatically, but when you do something military, you should have the force to back it up. And it should be done only in consultation and with the approval of professionals. When you sideline the Army Chief General Thapar, when you appoint a favorite with no battle experience as your corps commander, when the defense ministry through a joint secretary called Sareen deals with them, when the intelligence is provided by, as General Malik says, by P Malik, who was a charlatan and misled the government, he gave assessments without information. He had no business to do that. I think ultimately the buck stops with the Prime Minister. Now the defense minister has resigned, and right now things are heated. But this has to be made public because, as I said, we are making the same mistakes now in reducing defense budgets, in not providing the forces enough to function on the China border. And I think to avoid this in future, this has to be made public, and we should go about doing what is right with professional advice from the military. The state of civil-military relations today
Needs
is
to be
as bad
repaired.
as it was in 1961.
And
let me tell you something. I have a loyalty to my service, the Foreign Service. I have a loyalty to the army where I served for 5 years. But I have a loyalty to this country.
Yes,
I'm
and
not
that
in
comes
politics.
first.
Well, Maroof Raza, let's take up on that point that Mr. Parthasarthy was talking about. He said categorically that the buck stopped with the Prime Minister. And that's what this discussion is about today, is it not? Is that the reason? Because the buck stopped with the Prime Minister, is that the reason this report has been classified for more than 50 years?
Well, that is the assumption that has been there doing the rounds for decades now, because even the report and Maxwell post the report was on record to say, and even Mr. Chavan's statement in Parliament completely did away with any reference to the political leadership, therefore trying to put the blame entirely to the armed forces. And the armed forces, as I said, in war operate under larger political direction. If that direction has to come from the Prime Minister's office, if the Prime Minister cannot lead the country in the event of a national crisis, when is he going to lead the country? I'm not just saying about 62, but I'm saying generally. So this is the assumption that we would all logically work towards. Now, in the case of Pandit Nehru, there are 3 or 4 issues, and I'm not saying, and I repeat this again and again, that I'm not putting all the blame on Panditji's feet, but I'm saying there are 3 or 4 instances that need clarification, and by obfuscating the report or by putting it in the vault, you are trying to avoid answering those questions. The first is, who authorized the forward policy? Even though the forward policy was not clearly an act of aggression, these in military terms could be referred to as probing action or just movement of troops to the furthermost area that you envisage your borders to be. Who authorized the defense minister to get so heavily involved in giving statements, taking command of the Ministry of Defense and breaking the chain of command? Could he not have at some stage put the brakes on Krishna Menon, who historians cite as possibly one of Nehru's intellectual peers? So therefore there was that relationship, and we cannot deny that. And Nehruji apparently was on record to say, when they were baying for Krishna Menon's blood after the 62 war, that I'm protecting him because if they get him, they'll get me next. Now, this is on record. Even Panditji, though he is said to have said Hindi Chini bye-bye, on another occasion, Maxwell in his interview to Outlook magazine 2 years ago on the 50th anniversary of this conflict, has said that Panditji apparently told him that India has 2 enemies, Pakistan and China.
Correct.
Now, that's what Maxwell is saying, but there are other inferences towards that. So therefore, there is a certain degree of serious blame that falls on the Prime Minister's office, more so, as I repeat again and again, on several other guilty men, on which Krishna Menon is on the forefront of it. I want to bring out another sort of anecdotal point. It's an irony that the man who was responsible for the defeat of 62, his statue stands in front of Sena Bhavan, and no military commander has objected to him being there. Is it to remind us that we'll not do that again?
There are many, out of the many points that Mr. Parthasarthy and you have raised, there are other questions, but General Malik has been wanting to make a point for some time. Yes, General Malik.
Yeah, you know, look, when we are talking about politicians, let me say that categorically that Pandit Nehru misread the situation when the Chinese walked with their military boats into Tibet. They captured Tibet militarily in October 1950. And in November, his Home Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, on 7th of November wrote a letter cautioning him and the cabinet that, look, with these expansionist design of China, we ought to be careful. Unfortunately, that letter from Sardar Patel to Pandit Nehru was not made public for 18 years after that. So there are people who have misread the situation.
General
Yes.
Malik, to you, Mr. Parthasarthy and also Maroof Raza, the questions that I want to ask, when we are putting the why this report has been classified, we are trying to get to the source of it all. General Malik, you say, Mr. Parthasarthy there said that what is wrong in stationing troops at on your side of the border? Who decided that border? Was it mutually decided between India and China? That's something that Neville Maxwell has asked, and many other historians have asked. Who decided the perception of India's borderlines? Who decided that Aksai Chin was a point?
Yes, that's a very...
Who decided? And
very
from
good
58
question
onwards,
you are
why why is Mao Zedong quoted? And it's in courts asking, why are the Indians playing aggressor? Why are they trying to pinprick us? And why are they itching for war against us, knowing fully well that we are militarily far more competent? Why are they positioning, lackluster and weak troops at the Thagla bridge? Let's go and attack them and finish it off altogether. If war is what they want, let's give it to them. All this has been said by Mao Zedong. So the idea, what I'm trying to ask you is, was it driven by one particular person, this entire debacle and this entire 1962 ghost, which continues to haunt us till date, 52 years down the line? That's the question I'm trying to ask, and that's the answers perhaps this the declassification of this report can give. Isn't it, General Malik?
Yeah, that is true. But, as far as the border is concerned, there was ambiguity because the border was not delineated on the maps and it was just left that area cannot be surveyed. And therefore, both China and India were claiming certain parts of this whole border. But one day, I think it was sometimes in 64 or 63 or 64, a little earlier maybe, the Ministry of External Affairs drew a line on the map, which was approved by the Prime Minister, and this is recorded in our records, in our military.
How was that decision taken? How was that decision taken? Sanjay Jha, Sanjay Jha, please answer. This is the question. How was that decision taken? Was it because a perception of threat from China? It was unilaterally decided, or was it bilaterally decided? Solution of the borders was left by the British to India and all the neighboring countries and the neighboring to decide, sit across the table and decide on their own. So who decided that? And will this break a perception that's been created and maintained for the past 52 years? And that is what all governments are very, very wary of. It's not sensitive information. It is about who created the perception and what has led to what we are facing today.
Yes. Hopefully you'll give me more time to answer the question than the length of your question itself, Anand. But in very simple terms, yes, it's true that political leadership has to take the final call. But please remember that political leadership does not have the acumen or the skill to unilaterally decide what is going to happen at the border. It all depends upon the kind of intelligence that you get. You have different secretaries, you have members in the high command, you have the chiefs of army staff. These are very critical border issues. These are not political issues.
Who takes the final decision?
So I think the point that we need to consider here, these are collective decisions. I think please remember one thing. Please remember one thing, that the buck will universally always stop at the top. But the point that you need to understand today, since you started your discussion on the classification of the documents, I want to first tell you that I have read the relevant sections, and today if the defense minister believes that there are certain sections which are not in the public domain, need not be in the public domain because of strategic value that he believes are critical to India's border relationship with China,
why not release the other sections?
You must
why not declassify the other sections?
I think I respect the view of everybody on the panel. I respect the view of everybody on the panel, including Mr. Puri. But I also want to request the panel to kindly respect where the defense minister is coming from. At the appropriate time, maybe this is the call of this government. Maybe when we are back in 2014 June, maybe the defense minister, Mr. Antony, or whoever.
So many maybes, Mr. Jha. No, maybe 52 years down the line, perhaps there will be a thought again, and maybe then again you would think about declassifying the report, whichever government is at that point in time. So many maybes. No certainty.
But the question today, Sanjay Jha, has come from the BJP, where we've heard the BJP leaders coming out and saying that why has the Congress government not declassified this report? What is your answer to them?
Well, you answered the question yourself when you said, what if that is really true, then what was Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad doing in the NDA government for so long? He should have done that.
Mr. Puri,
I can tell you this is a standard political ploy. This is an attempt. This is a political ploy to, can you imagine, politicize an issue of national security. And the very fact that Mr. Prasad, the very fact that Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad brings in Sardar Patel in the discussion tells you how pedestrian. Well, let me tell you, you are not coming back in 2014 June, don't worry.
Totally available. Oh, I have no doubt. You know, we might have Mr. Antony again for another 5 years. And to the detriment of the armed forces. The poor armed forces, you know. And
you can relax.
We'll have Mr. Antony for another 5 years. But first decide who's fighting the elections. Amongst the Congress leaders, who's fighting the elections for the Lok Sabha. Then we'll decide who will be the Minister of Defence. Mr. Chidambaram
Anand, Mr. Puri,
you're veering off the point here.
You know, Mr. Jha, what the BJP, via Mr. Hardeep Puri has done is given the people of the country an assurance that parts of the report will be declassified if a BJP-led government does come to power after the 2014 elections. Can you give that assurance on behalf of the Congress?
Absolutely.
Can you give that assurance on behalf of the Congress and the UPA?
The assurance they gave to a lot of people in India in 1992 of trying to make a temple.
Let's talk about now.
No,
I'm asking you, the BJP has made a commitment on air, on national television, on the Newshour, that if it's an NDA-led government that comes to power, they will declassify certain portions of this report. Can the Congress give the people of the country that assurance?
To the lowest common denominator.
Can the Congress give the people of the country that assurance?
Not nationalists.
Can the Congress give the people of the country that assurance?
Well, let me tell you this.
Can the Congress give the people of the country that assurance?
Who's asking me this question? I want to know.
This is Anand Narasimhan asking you the question. Hardeep Puri has made a comment, has made an assurance, has made a commitment on behalf of the BJP.
You want, listen, this is what I call.
He has made a comment on behalf of the BJP.
As the arrogance
he has made an assurance.
You want me as a spokesperson of the party.
He says he's been authorized by the party.
On a Times Now Newshour program.
He says he's been authorized by the party. He has come with that assurance. He has come prepared to this debate. Have you come prepared to this debate to answer the people and tell them, yes, we will declassify the report, voters back into power?
Please let me tell you, in the BJP, they are.
I'm asking about the Congress, sir.
Please don't take Mr. Puri seriously. End of day, if
no
that
answers,
is, if that
no
is
answers again.
You speak for the Congress.
What it would have
deviate.
This is a banana republic.
No answers again. No answers again. No answers again.
The BJP is talking about.
Please answer the question, Mr. Jha. Yes or no, Mr. Jha?
Come on, we are discussing.
Yes or no, Mr. Jha?
1962.
There can be nothing
yes or no, Mr. Jha?
insecure that the country should feel about.
Yes or no, Mr. Jha?
I'm sorry, Mr. Puri. India should
yes
be scared
or no,
of you.
Mr. Jha?
India should be frightened of a BJP.
Yes or no, Mr. Jha?
Question is to you, not to Mr. Puri.
Well, let me tell you.
Well, there you go. We've put it out. We've asked the question.
No assurances from the Congress spokesperson here tonight.
Not like you. I can't believe that BJP on a national program is giving assurances.
Yes or no, Mr. Jha? On that note, we have to close this debate. We have to close this debate.
Spokesman has asked for the declassification. I cannot.
Yes, Mr. Maroof. Yes, Maroof. Final word. We've got to wind up this debate. We've run out of time quickly. Yes, Maroof.
Anand, just one extract from the report as the parting nail on the coffin. That the report also says that orders given from Delhi, apparently orchestrated by the then Defence Minister, to the commander at the Thagla Ridge to go and capture Dhola Post 1,000 yards away without cognizance of ravines and nalas in between was as absurd as the order for the charge of the Light Brigade. Now, who all were responsible? If the military was responsible, now put the blame on them. If the political leadership was responsible, for heaven's sake, have the grace to take blame now.
Absolutely. But are they not questions that need to be answered? That's what we've asked here tonight. The BJP spokesperson has come and said that the BJP, if it comes to power, will declassify sections of this report. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the first debate tonight on the Newshour.